Today, we're going to do a bit of an instant reaction to Dylan Brown walking out on the Eels to take up an utterly insane offer to join the Newcastle Knights. This is bonkers kind of money, makes no sense in my mind, and I'm really happy the club didn't, crap the bed and decide to pay him that kind of money themselves, because this is sort of utterly insane. I'm ultimately happy to sort of see the back of him, and you guys might push back on that, in particular Eels fans out there, but I want to sort of share my thoughts on this one, unpack my line of thinking now that I've had a couple of hours to sort of digest the news, and I want to see if you guys think I'm off base or whether or not you agree with me. Now, as I sort of just alluded to in that intro, I'm pretty comfortable with this news, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I was sort of expecting it, especially following some of Dylan's comments for the last few weeks. And it's just one of those ones where I can't sort of begrudge him for taking the money, because that money is life-changing, but at the same sort of time, I'm not going to hate on Parramatta Eels, the football club, either, for not sort of throwing the money back at him, because I don't think that would have been very wise. Now, fundamentally, you sort of look at Dylan in the last couple of years, I think he sort of let the club down, let the fans down, and let his teammates down by how much he sort of stayed within his shell, right? We sort of had the 2022 grand final. The guy then gets re-signed in 2023. We lose players due to injury. We lose Mitchell Moses. I think it was off the back of Origin. I could be wrong. And then Dylan Brown goes ahead and sort of does what he did to get suspended, to get stood down by the game. We sort of repay the faith, decide to stand by this guy, give him a sort of 10-year contract or whatever it was at the time. And the first chance he sort of had to sort of take on one of his player options, he sort of walked out the door and left the club high and dry, which I think is, completely unacceptable and maybe speaks to some of his character. Now, maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but when I sort of look at how he's played, in particular in 2023, when the club sort of needed him to, he sort of went and did what he did. He played like crap on the field. You then look at 2024, despite all those things happening in 2023, he came out and sort of said he wants to improve. He wants to sort of be there for the club. Mitchell Moses goes down twice last season, and Dylan basically stays within his shell and doesn't stand up and doesn't do anything. And then you sort of have the game against the Melbourne Storm yesterday, and more of the same, right? He went completely missing in that first half. He was dreadful in the second half, even worse in the first, and sort of sat on his heels, right? He let Ronnie Volkman, who's a complete amateur, right? The guy shouldn't be playing first grade at all. He's not made. He wasn't bought to play a lot of first grade, but Dylan sort of sat back and let Ronnie Volkman do everything, which was really disappointing to see. And that kind of game that we saw yesterday against the Melbourne Storm was not a good one, right? Because we clearly looked out of depth. Our errors were completely disgusting and unacceptable, nowhere near up to the first grade standard. You'd be hard-pressed to say it was even reserve grade standard, and you didn't really see much from Dylan. So my line of thinking is, I'm happy to see the guy gone, to be perfectly honest with you, because he wants to go ahead and take this $1.4 million from Newcastle. Yet what he dished up yesterday and how he turned up didn't indicate a guy wanting to be the best that he could, right? Didn't indicate a guy that wants to be the main man on the team. And when you're talking about this kind of money, that's the kind of player you have to be. And that was my fear coming into this season. That was my fear actually going into yesterday's game, because despite him having ridiculously stacked stats last season, right? He was statistically the best 5/8 in the game, if I remember correctly. His games last year were pretty average, right? He had all these really good try assists and tackle busts and line break assists and line breaks and the like. But if you go back and watch those games, for yourself, you don't really see a guy leading his team around the park. And when Mitchell Moses was gone, Dylan didn't really stand up. He padded his stats. He got really good stats, but they're not everything, right? And he wasn't there as a leader on the field. And that was just on show again yesterday. Now, to quickly bring up, obviously, the article, 360 tore him to shreds last night. They also tore the club to shreds, which I want to share some thoughts on in a second. He's sort of done the best thing for him and his family, which, again, you can't begrudge someone for, right? $13 million is insane. He was contracted at the Eels until 2031, so still a long time. But he was only sort of expected to earn $6.5 million for the remaining 5 years of his contract. Still very, very good money, or 6 years, whatever it is. But this Newcastle offer is essentially double that, right? And giving him 4 more years, taking him all the way until the age of 34, 35, which, again, when you're talking about modern sport, how your career can be ended like that through a silly injury or whatever it is, you can't begrudge him. But what I can do is begrudge sort of how he's handled himself since signing this contract. I would have liked to have thought he would have stuck around at the club and, maybe not walked right now, maybe just wanted to stick around for 2 more years, because he did, in fact, have that player option down the line to sort of repay the faith that we've put in him, because we're still giving him good money. I believe in 2026, he was on track to earn $1.1 million from the Eels, which is not that much different to the 1.3 he's going to get from Newcastle. And obviously, he's got those 4 extra years from them, and they've probably stacked his contract with player options and all that like. It's just disappointing. And to sort of see comments like this again from Dylan, he posted this on his Instagram. "Hello, everyone. I decided to take an opportunity that is best for me and my family. To the Blue and Gold, to the Blue and Gold family, nothing changes. I'm locked in for this year and we have a job to do, love, which, you know, that's just hollow words for me, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, because like I said, last season, and you guys will probably agree with me, he didn't really kick on like he should. Now, very quickly, you just heard me say that I wanted to have a bit of a dig at the guys on 360. They were talking about the player options that Parramatta had put into his contract in the first place, and they're talking about the fact that, you know, it's ridiculous for Parramatta to come out and say they're going to no longer do those kinds of, you know, options in their contracts, which I thought was a bit tongue-in-cheek from those talking heads, right? They're going to be pushing against Parramatta for saying, you guys should have put player options in there, like they're sort of saying now, because they used the example of Nathan Cleary. I'm not sure if you guys saw 360, but, you know, they asked the question, well, Parramatta are dumb for saying they're not going to put player options ever again, because if Nathan Cleary came on the market and he said he wants to join Parramatta, but the only condition is you got a player option, you're not going to give it to Nathan Cleary. And it's like, guys, you're sort of missing the point, right? You sort of can't let players put you over a barrel like, you know, Dylan Brown has in this particular instance, like Clint Gutherson has done in the past as well. You know, you can't really use the extreme of a Nathan Cleary to justify what Parramatta did or didn't do here. Had they not given Dylan Brown the player option 2 years ago, he probably wouldn't have signed with us 2 years ago. That's what they need to understand. Just because you're putting a player option there and you're trying to get a player does not mean they're going to stay. Case in point with Dylan Brown. I'm all for the club for not putting in these player options moving forward. And when these dickhead reporters come out and say, well, Parramatta can't be saying that, right? Because Nathan Cleary might come. Like, that's just ridiculous, right? Because those guys will shit on the club for putting them in there, and then they'll shit on the club for not putting them in there, right? They make up these narratives, they make up their own stories to justify their paychecks, and it's just ridiculous, right? We're getting pretty sick of this kind of stuff from these guys in the media. I think you're sort of seeing that by how much it's shifted to the likes of YouTube and other, you know, social media platforms, but I'm sort of getting sidetracked right now. You guys, I think, get what I'm trying to say on this whole situation. It's just utterly disappointing, and I would much prefer this football club for Parramatta to sort of tell Dylan, you know what, if you can go to Newcastle this year, get up and go. We don't want you here. Because we've had issues in this club for a long time, in particular under Brad Arthur, where we've obviously had a very poor culture fester for a long period of time. We've had players that have sort of been allowed to stick around despite not performing, you know, to expectations. And Jason Rowles has done a fantastic job in the last few months, you know, sort of pushing guys out, and it was disappointing to see the likes of Clint Gutherson go and Regal Campbell-Gillard. But he's pushed out a lot of other duds that shouldn't have been here, that were here and able to stay here because of bad management decisions, because of bad decisions from, you know, Brad Arthur. I think Dylan Brown, having him here and having somebody that doesn't want to buy into our culture, doesn't want to be part of this club after this season, shouldn't be allowed to stick around, right? We should be trying to move him on and do the best thing for us. And if that means we can send him to Newcastle, maybe sign one or two players this season, I think that's what we should be doing, right? This guy's not going to be here after this season. So why try and make combinations work if this guy's not going to be here? Why keep somebody that doesn't want to stick around? Why keep somebody that says, well, he's still here to try and do the best thing for Parramatta, when in reality, he's just walked out on the club. And when in reality, when he's had opportunities, when Mitchell Moses was out in 2023, he didn't step up. When he had opportunities last season, he didn't step up. He had opportunities in round one to step up and be a leader on that field, and he went MIA completely. And a number of our senior players did that, in particular Junior Paulo. So, you know, I'm not fussed with these news. I'm very happy the club didn't decide to sort of re-sign him. If they went ahead and matched that offer for Newcastle, you could kiss goodbye our football club for the next decade, because that's just insane money. He's not lived up to potential. I'm worried he'll never live up to potential. He's got such a high ceiling. He's one of my favorite players, but good riddance, mate. We don't need you around anymore, and we don't want you here, right? So that might be sour grapes from me. He's a fantastic junior. I've seen him come through the ranks since he was a 15, 16-year-old. So it's incredibly disappointing, but it's like, what else can I say? And I'm sure you guys get where I'm coming from. He's obviously a player that can win a premiership, but he hasn't shown that with us. And maybe him moving is going to do that out at Newcastle. But it's one of those things where obviously it is what it is. And apologies for having to cut the video there. My phone started to ring. But I want to hear what you guys have to say down below, because fundamentally, like, it's just disappointing. And he hasn't stepped up when he's had ample opportunity. So I can't justify the kind of money that he was going to get paid from Newcastle. I wouldn't even justify the money that he's currently on at Parramatta, right? He goes to $1.1 million, I believe, next season. Like, he's not even worth, you know, $700K, $800K, because whenever he's had the opportunity to be the main man on the field, he's not delivered. And he's now getting paid to do that at Newcastle, right? He's getting paid more than Mitchell Moses. He's getting paid more than Nathan Cleary, I believe, especially if the ratchet clauses kick in and his salary goes from 1.3 to 1.4. If the salary cap increases, it's just insane. And Newcastle have put themselves in a really precarious position now, where they've both got him and Ponga basically taking up over 30% of their salary cap for two players. Like, that's just crazy. And they're both not individually match winners. Sure, they will win you a match individually, I should say, but they're not going to be guys that will consistently put you in a position to win big games, right? They're going to be guys that will win you a big game, but they won't necessarily get you there, at least in my opinion. And maybe I'm just getting sour grapes, like I said a bit earlier. But I just think this is crazy from Dylan. And, I think the key thing for Parramatta is what they do with his money, right? Because we have a really good opportunity here now to sort of go after someone like Lachlan Galvin or somebody else and pay decent coin, a lot less than what you'd pay Dylan, and then also prop up another position. We've clearly got issues on our edge back row. Sean Lane has turned to crap. Ryan Madison, although he doesn't play the edge anymore, has not been very good. Kelma Tuolungi is dreadful, as he was again yesterday. That was a terrible game from him. We can use that money to sort of get another decent 6 and then maybe also strengthen our back rows, right? We've got a really good opportunity here to sort of strengthen and build into that culture that Jason Riles is trying to build. And, the jury's still out on Jason, obviously, but he's done a really good job cleaning up that bad culture that I've sort of alluded to a little bit earlier on this video, right? We've clearly had players here that have been here for too long. They've had too many favors go their way. They've had too many chances go their way. They've not really been, put in a position to excel, right? And when they've had opportunities, they've been, rewarded for mediocrity. And I think that's happened for far too long in our club. And Jason has clearly tried to turn that around. So what I truly hope to sort of see over the next, few months is him sort of sign players that actually want to be here and actually want to be here long term. And what's really important for Parramatta is I believe we only have a handful of players signed for 2026 and beyond. And we've got a really good opportunity the next 12 to 18 months to sort of put our next 10 years as being really strong and effective, right? If we stuff up this recruitment period over the next 12 to 18 months, you can sort of kiss Parramatta goodbye for the next decade. And that might, again, sound a bit out there. That might be me being very pessimistic, but that's how important this next period is, right? We have only a handful of players signed. Not many clubs are in a position like that. And if we can sort of build a good culture and sign people we actually want to sign and actually have people here that want to put in for the jersey, you can put this club in a really strong position, but you could also muck it up. So let's sort of see what happens. Anyway, that's sort of it for today. Stay tuned. If you liked the video, please subscribe. Give me a like down below and let me know your thoughts. And stay tuned because there's a lot more videos coming from me. Cheers.